Doubles and Coffee, good morning. I'm going to give all you a little quiz today. Today we're going to Doubles and Coffee lecture class. I'm going to read for you a Guardian editorial. The Guardian of PNM K-Pax, the PNM fake news media general flagship, the Guardian newspaper that losing over 17 million per year, million, and they don't seem to want to care that people are onto them and onto their fake news. But while I read it, I want you all to understand, think about the journalistic integrity, what journalism is supposed to be, what the fourth estate is supposed to be, why news reporters are allowed to call press conferences and question political public figures and so on, and normally public officials should have a responsibility to respond. But in Trinidad and Tobago, that respect is lost because the media has become a tool of the PNM, a puppet of the PNM, a game player for the PNM to try to promote the evil of the PNM. But while I read this for you, I want you to think carefully because I'm going to ask you all some questions when I'm finished reading this excerpt from the Guardian newspaper editorial today. When humanity is lost, the inability and refusal of the leadership of the world community to do something meaningful about the slaughter of innocent people outside of the combatants of the wars in Eastern Europe and Palestine are clear indications of a loss of humanity. If we forget for a moment what the contests in the two major wars are about, and consider the low value placed on human life, it may shock us into arriving at the reality of how closely we resemble the beasts of the jungle. On the surface, it seems impossible that 21st century mankind, in particular those in countries in which their leaders with the power to do something to stop the inhumane elimination of tens of thousands of people, mainly women and children, can continue living daily lives unconcerned about the genocidal killings in Palestine in particular. Moreover, the slaughter of an estimated 64,000 Palestinians, a full 80% of such persons being defenseless women, non-combatant men, and children, is being encouraged, defended, and carried out with weapons sold and or given to Israel by the acclaimed most civilized of mankind in North America and Western Europe. In the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the latest figures show that close to 2 million people have been killed. How can leaders, especially of a modern civilization, having emerged from the dark ages of the 14th and 15th centuries in Europe, rationalize, even contemplate in a meaningful manner to adopt the position of standing on the sidelines and occasionally issuing inane and ineffective statements without the force to end the slaughter? Moreover, the said leaders of several European and North American countries are continuing to be instrumental in the murders, while millions of citizens of these countries have been marching and protesting against the slaughter of innocents, who therefore are the leaders, the governments, the parliamentarians of such countries, representing when large numbers of those they are supposed to speak for are demonstrating their complete opposition to the killings. The intensity and expansion of the killings and the displacement of the defenseless in Gaza have increased the point where the Israeli Prime Minister and the United States President have agreed to clear Gaza of Palestinians, establish an area for frolicking of the rich of the world. Such a plan is consistent with the objective of Russia and Israel to take possession of Ukrainian and Palestinian lands. In the instance of the latter, a complete destruction of Palestine and the scattering of its people. In the case of Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his team have not hidden the view that they consider the Palestinians to be less than human and therefore not entitled to be treated like themselves. The land grab in Eastern Europe is all about one group of people, the Russian oligarchy led by President Putin, fulfilling its quest to re-establish something of the Soviet Union to become a predominant force in Eastern Europe, at another level of the do-nothing attitude to stop the slaughter. The International Court of Justice has been brooding over a case of genocide brought by South Africa against Israel for almost 2 years. What more evidence is needed to conclude on a matter that is daily before their eyes? That's the Guardian newspaper editorial. Let me say from the onset, I agree with every single word. And there can be no comparison to genocide, murder, and war. However, principles of ethics, morality, humanity, love, respect, empathy, sympathy are principles that come down the continuum of offenses and offensive action. So let's come down a bit from those two critical, major, murderous activities that are ongoing in the geopolitics of the globe now, but keeping the same principles that we, as intelligent, democratic, free, independent nations representing people, have a responsibility to act in the best interest of humanity. Let's take that Guardian position. That is the position of the Guardian newspaper today when discussing the Ukrainian war, Russia-Ukrainian war, and the genocide in Palestine. So I ask you, Guardian Media Limited, at what level along the continuum do your principles, your morals and ethics change? Because right across the pond, right here, 7 miles away, a dictator, an oppressor, a tyrannical cartel leader, a drug runner, a nepotistic stealer of elections, an illegitimate, oppressive, tyrannical mastermind of hatred and wickedness who has affected the human rights of millions of Venezuelans. 8 million Venezuelans in the last 6 years have fled Venezuela. This tyrant Maduro, who's an indicted drug runner and cartel runner, countless people, too many people to count, and unknown, have died because of his greed and his craft for money and corruption and cocaine. The guns that flow through our Gulf of Paria and stop here on our twin island republic in the hands of our young people who don't have the brain to understand that they will die without having a family, without having lived, without having experienced how beautiful life is. Where is your moral indignation, your ethical stand to stand with the USA, who is coming to keep this area safe, to keep this area away from drugs, cocaine, murder, guns, bullets, our young people committing genocide in the ghettos and in the constituencies of the PNM across Trinidad and Tobago? Where's your indignation? Where's your concept? How can you then come to say and take the PNM position which says, leave the tyrannical oppressor, leave the stealer of elections, leave the nepotistic dictator, leave the inhumane oppressor, leave the corrupt official, leave the drug cartel runner, leave the man who has caused his country to become one of the poorest in the world despite having the most resources possible. Where is your similar, your similar philosophy, your similar belief, your similar strength to say to Nicolas and Maduro, get out, return Venezuela to a free democratic republic, Let the people go home from wherever they have fled. We have 150,000 Venezuelans here possibly. We don't even know the number. Nobody counted. The PNM did not count. They lied and said they were 13,600 when you could have seen that down in Cedros alone. Why don't you fight for the freedom of the people of Venezuela? Where is your righteous indignation when Maduro and his defense minister, who have stolen power since July 28, 2024, who were not duly elected, they threatened the people of Guyana, the resources of Guyana, the lives of the people in the Essequibo and in Guyana, our CARICOM neighbors? Where is your righteous indignation? Where is your strength? Where are your instructions to the population to stand with Guyana against the inhumane, oppressive, dictatorial, nepotistic, illegal, illegitimate actions of Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela? You see, Guardian, that's why nobody reads you, nobody believes you, nobody cares. Because you cannot run hot and understand one issue from an emotional, moral, ethical one, and then on another one, go a different direction. And I ask you, the population, why is that? How come the Guardian could get it so correct with the issues of Ukraine and Russia and Palestine and Israel? How can the Guardian be so close to journalistic integrity, strength, opinion, fact-finding, and delivery of strong words to try to impact action of leaders across not only Trinidad and Tobago, but the CARICOM and the world? How can the Guardian get it so right with the Israel-Palestine conflict and genocide and the Ukrainian-Russia conflict? And I put it to you, because it have no PNM in Ukraine or Russia. It have no PNM in Palestine or Israel. And the Guardian is PNM. And that's the point that they can make pellucid, that they are corrupt media house, that they are beholden to the PNM, that their logic, their ethics, their strength, their love and lust for fairness, equity, and survival of humanity all goes to naught when it involves the PNM. So no matter how ridiculous the position of the PNM, no matter how corrupt the PNM, no matter how disgusting the PNM, no matter how anti-patriotic the opinion of the PNM, the Guardian will promote that nonsense, but then try to pretend that we must read them and understand global issues. Guardian media, you're being unmasked. You are PNM fake news media. That's why you are the worst newspaper in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. And your numbers are dropping daily. Just like the Express, down from the highs of 2012 to 89,000 papers per day, down to below 40,000. And the Newsday, after hiring Rowley Gal, moved from 49,000 papers per day in daily circulation, down to 6,000. And Suniti, press freedom does not mean that you must get ads from the government and the government advertisements. The mere fact that you depend on government advertisements means that your journalistic integrity is not intact and that your model is not working, because a newspaper should survive on private sector independent funding. Anytime you're beholden to a government, it means you will, the concept or the principle of apparent bias will take over. The PNM fake news media in Trinidad and Tobago is losing its power. Guardian, check yourself, because you have wrecked yourself. Your editorial today on global issues talks about humanity, respect, accountability, ethics, and morality, and you are correct. The problem is you do not use that same measuring tape when it comes to Trinidad and Tobago political issues. You've been caught wanting. You are corrupt, and the people are fed up. I hope I've made my case once again. Fire burn the Guardian, fire burn PNM fake news media, stand with Kamla Persad Bissessar and the United National Congress Coalition of Interest Government to improve Trinidad and Tobago. Bless.